The money was officially under the responsibility of the international coalition, but it was in fact the Pentagon that handled and controlled it in the person of the so-called American proconsul, Paul Bremer. As soon as Bremer took charge of Baghdad, he declared Iraq a territory where the Iraqi law was no longer valid, but he didn't put it under the American law either. This created a vacuum of power in which the only law became the law of survival.
So American law was suspended, Iraqi law was suspended, and Iraq basically became a free fraud zone. In a free fraud zone, you can steal anything you like. And that was what they did.
Any American company that came up with a project was immediately financed, with no questions asked, and sometimes even without signing a receipt.
$2 million was due on the 1st of August. We went down to the vault, got the $2 million in crisp new $100 bills. They were shrink-wrapped in $100,000 amounts. We called the representative of Custer Battles and said, come on up and get your payment, bring a gunny sack. We've got your money ready for you.
Yet the only companies allowed to participate in the no-bid contracts were Halliburton and its subsidiaries, which ended up getting the entire share of the pie.
When the vice president is your former CEO, you're going to get the access that other people don't.
But this isn't all. All the money literally disappeared in a couple of months, without a single school, hospital, or bridge ever being built. This generated a monstrous paradox in which the same people who had just been destroying the country, the Vice President and the Secretary of Defense, were now managing and assigning the money for the reconstruction.
It is reportedly not a coincidence that Vice President Dick Cheney's old company got a huge contract to help rebuild Iraq. Time magazine said it has gotten a hold of a Pentagon email saying Cheney's office coordinated Halliburton's multi-billion-dollar deal.
The contract with Halliburton was based on the so-called cost-plus formula, in which the company is reimbursed for all expenses incurred, and on top receives a profit that is proportional to such expenses.
A cost-plus arrangement that critics say leaves little incentive to save. The more taxpayer dollars Halliburton spends, the more Halliburton makes.
The place that they chose for orientation in Kuwait was a huge resort set right on the ocean. Had, I think, 3 swimming pools.
Marble floors, mahogany woodwork. It's just beautiful. You could go and rent wave runners and go out and play in the water.
I was told this, don't question it, enjoy it.
It was so lavish. Rows of vegetable platters, beef platters, fish platter.
We had it made over there compared to the military. I mean, those guys were living in tents and we had air-conditioned private hooches.
The soldiers are sleeping on these little cots out in the middle of the desert. While these KBR executives are driving these $40,000 vehicles.
This secretary lives in this complex, eats her meals in this complex, has her laundry delivered to her, has no reason to go anywhere at any time, but has a brand new top-of-the-line Ford or Chevy pickup with everything imaginable on it that you could put on it.
Chrome rims and leather interior and CD players and all these extra amenities that, you don't really need in wartime.
Why do they need an H2 Hummer? Why do they have Cadillac Escalades in Iraq for Halliburton managers? What is the purpose?
Cost Plus encourages you to run up the cost of a program because you are going to get a percentage of the end result.
Halliburton stock has quadrupled in value since the war began, and taxpayers are being ripped off.
In order to truly inflate the costs, however, sleeping in luxury hotels is not enough. You have to waste, destroy, throw away everything possible to then reorder everything anew.
They got the wrong equipment, ordered the wrong stuff, computers still in boxes, new vehicles. They'd push them out in what they called burn pits. And they just set it on fire, claim it as a loss, get more money for the right equipment or the right stuff they needed.
You got brand new trucks over there, and there's not even oil filters. So when the motor blows, what do? Buy a new truck and build the government.
$75,000 truck. They wouldn't even have a spare tire to fit it. And we had to blow it up. And they didn't care Halliburton did because the government's paying for it.
We knew that every day that a vehicle broke down, we would have to destroy it. And these are maybe $80,000 vehicles, maybe $100,000. You know, they're expensive trucks. We're burning fuel in front of Iraqi people. We're not really doing anything to help, and we just have to follow the orders.
As a truck driver in the mail department, they'd send me to these camps with one bag of mail. That's risking my life just to deliver one bag of mail.
Halliburton's charging the government for every camp they go by. And your buddy's getting killed for no cause at all. Not even as much as a Band-Aid on the truck. That's how Halliburton was making their killing and making their money.
Halliburton was hired to provide clean, safe cooking, cleaning, shower water for the military. One of Halliburton's employees saw something wiggling in the water in his toilet bowl. So I went and tested the water in our water storage tanks. There was no chlorine in them, none. The water we showered in every single day was extremely contaminated. And when I talk about contaminated water, I'm saying malaria, typhus, giardia, cryptosporidium. I mean, the list is really, really long. They were only concerned with making their profit and didn't care how it may affect the troops. Of the 67 water treatment plants that Halliburton run, 63 of them weren't providing safe water. And the Marines are showering in it every single day.
In the meantime, the Pentagon had registered the disappearance of over $2 trillion in one fiscal year alone.
When DOD's own auditors say the department cannot account for $2.3 trillion in transactions in 1 year alone.
It is,
it's a terrible record, and it's preposterous that the Defense Department doesn't know what's happened to this money.
Oil companies have also had immense benefit from the crisis caused by the war.
ExxonMobil just reported earnings for the third quarter, and here it is, $10.5 billion, $10.5 billion of profits in 3 months. And get this, Tony, it's the second most profitable quarter ever for an American corporation. Guess number one was? Number one was ExxonMobil in the fourth quarter of last year, where they earned $10.7 billion.
The more oil companies gain, the more they can finance an administration that has clearly been acting according to their own interests. This all translates in an ever-increasing cost for the taxpayer, who has to shoulder the entire cost of the war in the Middle East. Before 2001, a full tank of gasoline would cost about $20. The same fill-up today costs over $50. For the military industry, the private companies, and the oil companies, the consequences of September 11 have turned into a bonanza of profits that has become difficult to translate into actual numbers.
They were thinking about 9/11 not as an attack, but as a gift.
In the meantime, tens of thousands of mercenaries have reached Iraq from all over the world, perfectly organized by specific companies, but paid for by the American taxpayer. They have found in Iraq the ideal ground to express their vocation. This is a group of mercenaries from Aegis, a British security company, having fun while shooting people in the streets around Baghdad.